Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're resuming our series on the Acts of Moses. We talked about we talked about the reminders of obedience and how those things can help, but they will not really keep people from they'll not always keep people in obedience. And the greatest reminder of obedience, the one that works most effectively, is the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. And and since then we took a little hiatus for the holidays of Sukkot, or for the fall holidays that started with Yom Teruah and ended with the eighth day of Sukkot. And we talked about the end times in a series called the tribulation of the kingdom. But now we're back. And today we're talking about the inheritance of the Levites. And we begin here with Exodus 32:25 through 29. To get the remind sort of a recap to remind us why the Levites are going to have a special status in the first place, because their inheritance is different than all the other tribes in several ways. And it goes to this special status. And here's why they have it. When Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked under the shame of their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me." And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves unto him. And he said to him, "Thus is the Lord of Israel, God of Israel. Put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from the gate to the gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, every man his neighbor." The children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. There fell that day about 3,000 men. And for Moses had said, "Consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, even every man upon his son, upon his brother, may bestow upon you a blessing this day." So this was the go. This was at the time of the golden calf. Again, this is the time of the golden calf, and they became naked, and they consecrated themselves to get this blessing by answering the call. Notice the call of Moses was not to the Levites, who was on the Lord's side. The call, many were called, but only few were chosen. Those few were the Levites, because they were the ones who answered the call. And all the sons of the Levites, is a little figure. It's really more the ideal. All the people who showed up were Levites, or most of the Levites. Why do we say most? Is because some of them were out committing this sin, and the Levites killed them. Which we learned, as we showed before previously in this series, from Deuteronomy, they killed their own parents, their own siblings, their own children who were involved in this idolatry. And that's what set them apart from all the other tribes. They carried out the instructions of the Lord in bringing judgment on those who had turned against the Lord. Now, and that's sort of brought out, here, his brother, his companion, his best friend, his neighbor. It didn't matter. If they caught them naked in this worship, they killed them. And the ones that got away, that they didn't get, God Himself killed with a plague, to bring a total of 24,000. We saw now, here's the result of them being consecrated this way. The reward the Lord's going to give them. In Numbers 18:6 through 7, we read the following: And I, behold, have taken your brethren the Levites from among the children of Israel. To you they are given as a gift for the service to the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Therefore, you with your sons with you shall keep the priest office for everything of the altar and within the veil, and you shall serve. For I have given the priest office unto you as a gift, as a service of gift, and the stranger comes nigh shall be put to death. Okay, so it's a gift. The Levites are a gift for the Lord to help in helping the priest. The service of the priest is a gift to the Lord that was given to them. No one but the priest could go into certain areas. They'd be put to death, but no one but the Levites could go. Could also go in many places as well. If you remember, under some under some circumstances, when basically the Lord said so, they could go where they perhaps wouldn't go normally, like when the sons of Aaron offered the strange fire, Nadab and Abihu, right? Offer the strange fire, okay, and it kind of indicate they were in the holy place. And Aaron, as their two sons weren't allowed to go there to go there and get in there until the Levites cleaned it up, okay, because it was unclean because they were touching the ashes. That's all that was left. So they could go where no one else could go except the priest. The you know except, and there were some place the priest alone could go. So they have this exalted position that puts them closer to God. The place that is dwelling among them was over the Ark of the Covenant in the holy place for the most part. And they could get a lot closer to that than anyone else. And also remember they were camped around. We looked at that. They were their camps were the closest to the tabernacle, and no one else could even come into that area except for that part on the eastern plaza where the congregation met. Okay, now we continue on here in Numbers 18, verse 21 through 24. Behold, I've given the children of Levi a tenth of Israel for an inheritance, for their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle. Neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle congregation, lest they bear their sin and die. But the Levites shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generation. The children of Israel, among the children of Israel, they have no inheritance. But the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as a heath offering to the Lord, have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore, I have said to them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. So, 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 look, they're not going to be inheritance, as it says here. And what that's referring to, so we'll see a little later, they're not going to be farmland. That's the main way. That was the main source of income at this time. Remember, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had all been shepherds, except with flocks and herds. That was their main source of wealth. It's what allowed them to accumulate the gold and everything else, and silver was actually their agricultural business. Well, there's going to be no agricultural business for the Levites because they're not going to instead. So how they're going to have income? Their income instead is going to be paid by all the other tribes. They're going to end up giving them all of them are going to have to give a tithe, a tenth of their income every year. And so the Levites, what this means in practical terms, I mentioned in our last series, when I mentioned how all Israel will be priests eventually, was the Levites will end up, because there's about 20 times many other people in the other tribes as there are Levites. They'll end up with approximately double the average income of the average of the average non-Levite among the rest of the tribes. Okay, so they're going to end up they're going to end up they're going to and that's to let them focus on their job of taking care of the tabernacle. So since they don't have an inheritance, they're not they're inheriting a job, and they're inheriting income with that job, not the means to make the income. They're not inheriting that. The other tribes are inheriting a means to make the income instead. Now there's some rules for them about tithes as well. You can think of them as being like ministers. And one of the questions people have is, well, should ministers pay? Do ministers need to pay tithes as well? And here's what it's and the answer here is yes, as we'll see here in Numbers 26, verse 20 through 28. Speaking of the Levites, saying to them, when you take of the children of Israel the tithes which I've given you from them for your inheritance, you shall offer up a heave offering of it for the Lord, even a tenth part of the tithe. And your heave offering shall be reckoned you as though it were the corner of the threshing floor and the fullness of the winepress. Thus you shall have a heave offering in the Lord for all your tithes that you receive the children of Israel. You shall give and you shall give there of the Lord's heave offering to Aaron the priest. Okay, some outstanding things about this. First of all, notice they're ministers who are receiving tithes, but they are to also pay tithes. And notice, this is why a moment ago was brought out here, that their tithes is in place of the means to produce income, the income alone. And it's become, and so this brings their question or thought people said, well, people don't have to pay tithes. It's only for farmers. It's the ones listed in Leviticus, talk about tithing of the cattle. And well, but this makes it clear it's anyone. If you're not in if you're not in agricultural business, it's whatever your business, whatever your income source comes from. It's kind of as if it was agricultural, which is what happens here. The Levites don't have any farmland, aren't going to have any, but their money is going to count. Their tithes is going to count. Their income is going to count as if they had farmland, as if it came. So the ideal is the produce or the income, not necessarily the form the income comes in. And so they're going to give this and that's a heave offering to Aaron the priest. And this heave offering, of course, a lot of it goes to the Lord. So, Aaron is sort of a type of Messiah. So, how can ministers pay tithes? Oh, one thing is take that money and give to the poor. He that gives to the poor gives to the Lord, we're told. Lends to God and God will repay. So they can take their 10% of their money and just give it to the poor in some fashion, and perhaps as a fund in their congregation has for that purpose set. But the point is, the tithes, even though they were not farmers, their income was considered the same as if they had been farmers. And this is made absolutely clear here in Malachi 3, verse 7 through 9. Even from the days of your fathers, you're going to stray from my ordinances and have not kept them. Return to me, and I'll return to you, says the Lord of hosts. But you said, wherein shall I return? Well, a man robbed God, yet you have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. So notice, it's about saying things to notice here. Well, we'll talk about the farming thing first. Notice who robbed him. This whole nation. It doesn't say the farmers robbed me. It's the whole nation. All of them owed God tithes and offerings. Notice how offerings are listed. It's tithes and offerings. Okay, so you can't. An offering is something you give on top of the tithes, and often it's to show thanks or peace or something, or so there's a peace offering, or whatever. But it's generally for showing thanks to God for something. Is most of the time what it's for. Sometimes it's for a special purpose, like like the tabernacle we saw, the $1 billion or whatever it was building program. Okay, that was an offering on top of tithe. Tithe hadn't been established yet in this sense of the ordinances of the Levites, but these offerings, like when the tabernacle was built and the temple, etc., were on top of tithes. And a lot of people, when I grew up, a lot of people, so they had tithes and offerings, but they didn't pay either one. They weren't giving God 10% of their money. They were giving it's like they were giving a tip, like you might give someone at a restaurant at best. Except a lot of people at restaurants will actually give a 10% tip. And it was like giving God a bad tip at that. So it's not just where you give tithes, but offerings as well. In particular, three are mentioned in particular at the time of the feast of unleavened bread, first fruits at Shavuot or Pentecost, and during the Feast of Tabernacles. No man's to show up empty. You're to bring an offering in proportion to how God's blessed you. And it's not specified. It's not like the tithes where it says 10%. It's up to you to decide what what you can will and want to give to show. And basically, you're acknowledging and thanking God in those three times for your for everything you've gotten in His hand and his making your efforts successful. Okay, so that's one aspect of it. And the people who try to claim that it's for farmers only are generally, by and large, people who meet on the Sabbath and claim the Torah observant. But notice this is an ordinance of the Torah. Okay, it's an ordinance of the Torah, and it's the whole nation. So if you're not paying tithes and offerings, if you're not giving tithes, you're not Torah observant at all. Just like if you don't take care of the poor, you're not Torah observant at all. The Torah says to do that. And you may say, well, I'm poor. But the Bible definition of poor, the Greek word literally means reduced to begging. If you're not reduced to begging, then you've got something to give. We'll talk about why someone wouldn't do that in a moment here. So that's one. But the other aspect to bring out to you is people who tell people you're not under these ordinances, under the law. And that's what he's talking to. Ordinances of the law, and have not kept them, have gone away from them. Well, why? Their fathers had agreed to keep them. Well, if people are not under the law, then they have no obligation to pay tithes either. And Messiah himself said tithes was a lesser, was not part of the weightier, was something people did in replace, but neglect the weightier matters. It wasn't one of the weightier matters. So that's a it's a contradiction. It's like these ministers, and they primarily meet on Sunday, want people to be under the law only in this one point. Otherwise, they'll say, well, you're not under the law. Well, of course, it's hypocritical. It's a lie. And their heart's not right. Okay. I understand they need money. They need money to operate. And there's plenty of good reasons for people to give tithes that have nothing to do with the law. Abraham wasn't under the law when he gave tithes. But to use this passage, the basically guilt trip people or whatever, and say, hey, look, you're robbing God, is hypocritical when they say they're not under the law. Why were those under the law robbing God? Because they agreed to give the tithes and offering. They agreed that by being Torah observant. But if you haven't agreed to that, you're not robbing God. Again, lots of good reasons. Primarily, and the reason I started, no one that gave me any benefits. There's great benefits to it. God, some promises God makes, but was this: Jesus said, "The children of Abraham do what Abraham does." I read this in the New Testament, and I read later in the New Testament, Abraham paid tithes of all. Paid tithes of all. So I want to be like I want to be a child of Abraham. Now you need to do what Abraham did, so I started paying tithes. And that's where I started for myself. But that had nothing to do with the law. Abraham was paying tithes before the law, 400 years before the law. So, so why do people on one hand say they're Torah observant and then try to not pay tithes, try to look for a loophole and exemption, claiming it's only for the people who make their money in agriculture, or on the other hand, claim you're not under the law, and claim go the opposite direction. We're not under the law, but you are obligated to pay tithes as the law, pay tithes to not be cursed. What's driving this? I mean, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. And Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, gets right to the heart of the matter. Here's what he says in Luke 16, 10 through 14. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. He that is unjust in least is also unjust in much. If therefore you've not been faithful in unrighteous mammon, who will commit to you the true riches? If you've not been faithful that which is another man's, who will give you that which is your own? No man can serve two masters, for he'll hate the one and love the other, or else he'll hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And the Pharisees, who were covetous, heard these things and derided him. All right, derided is old English, kind of old English term, but that means they mocked him. They made fun of him. Okay, his stance here on being faithful. Now, mammon is a word for money. Why is it unrighteous? Because it's not righteous in of itself at all. Okay, remember the Bible says about false teachers. They teach that godliness, that gain is godliness. Okay, the great gain is godliness. It shows that you got wealthy. It shows that that shows that God's favors on you. Nah, people get wealthy from doing wicked things all the time. The Bible's full of examples of that. But so the money's not righteous, is what he's saying. Money's not righteous. It's just something. It's just something that's here on this earth. But those true riches are in heaven. But you got to show yourself faithful with money that's here on earth, which itself again, not, this is unrighteous. He's not saying it's wicked. He's saying it isn't. He's saying it's not good. It's basically neither good nor bad. It's just a tool. Well, if you're not in faithfulness, then God's not going to commit to you true riches. And so that's the root of the thing here about the heart. Because you're faithful in least, you're also be faithful much. He's not going to, if you're not be faithful with however little money you got in paying tithes, if you say you're Torah observant, then he's not going to put you over 10 cities or even one. Because the truth is, you're unjust. You're robbing God. And if you're going to be unjust with whatever little money you have, you're going to be unjust with as much as well. Having more won't make you faithful or just or unjust. It'll just magnify what you already are. And what you're doing with your tithe money shows that. And and notice, if you have not been faithful, which is another man's. Well, at the end of the day, God gave you everything. He gave all of us everything we have. You might say, well, I have this, work. Well, where'd you get the talent to do that? Where'd you get the health to do it? Maybe you inherited a bunch of stuff. Where'd you inherit it from? Or maybe you didn't inherit nothing. But again, you worked hard. But God says he will give you good success when you work hard. Or against the wicked, if he decides he's going against you, you're not going to have good success no matter how hard you work. At the end of the day, it's not your wealth anyways. But you're not being faithful in it. And why would people do this? Why and on the other hand, why would they be unfaithful to the word of God by telling people who are not under the law that they are robbing God because they didn't keep their commitment under the law to pay him tithes? Because the problem is both groups are trying to serve two masters. They're trying to serve God and mammon or money, and they cannot be done. And why would they do that? Because they're covetous. That just means they want other stuff. They're not content with what they have. Messiah said, Messiah said, Messiah told us to be content with what we have. I mean, having food, clothing, and shelter, we're told, be content. Messiah told us that life does not consist of the things we possess. I mean, he walks around depending on other people all the time. Had not even have a place to lay his head. He was anything but covetous. He wasn't always wanting more stuff and other stuff. And that's the root. They have a conflict. If I give this money to God, first, one thing is, let's just say they have enough to live on without it. I won't be able to get X. I won't. Well, covetousness is idolatry. Is like idolatry. The Bible tells us they've now made an idol of that thing that they're saving up money for, or not wanting to give money to God so they can get it. That thing is an idol in your life if you've done that. And these ministers, it's often the same thing. It's in reverse. It's because they're covetous. They want more money coming in, not to keep the lights on the building, except or to provide for their family, but they want to have they want to have the better the more abundant life or whatever expression that they're using. They will upgrade their car, except they aren't having food, clothing, and shelter. They're not content either. They feel like they're like I deserve the best. Not looking at Messiah, who came and lived among the poorest. So they are also twisting the word of God, just like the groups who saying we don't have to pay because we're not doing agriculture, who say you're not in the law, but you got to pay because the law says so. And that's the root of these problems, okay? But it's not, they're both bad, they're both evil, and they're both come from ultimately from putting something in front of God, loving something else above God, making something else an idol. The other thing, if you're like me, when I started paying tithes, my tithes were $3.78 a week, and I had a wife and one child. But so the Bible said to do, so I started doing it. I didn't know God was going to bless me for doing it. But people were like, "Weren't you afraid to do that? You were living today it'd be the equivalent of $75 a week. I have a wife and child. Weren't you afraid? Weren't you afraid to do that? Same. No, I was never afraid. God commanded. If God where God guides, He provides. I didn't know about these promises, but I knew God was going to tell me to do something I couldn't do. So fear's perhaps another reason too. But it goes. But fear is also, if fear keeps, as we mentioned our last lesson, the fearful are the first group listed in the lake of fire. Those who let fear keep them from obeying God's commandments. So don't do it. God can be trusted. Now, that takes care of the income of the Levites. But if they don't have these farms and stuff, where are they going to live? That's generally been the mode. They've been out living in tents. Everyone's been very agricultural. Where are they going to live? And that's what we're going to look at next. Another part of their inheritance here in Numbers 35, verses 2-5. Command the children of Israel that they give unto the Levites the inheritance possession, cities to dwell in. He shall give the Levites suburbs of the cities round about them. And the city shall they have to dwell, in the suburbs of them for their cattle and for their goods and for their beasts. And the suburbs for the cities which you give the Levites shall reach the wall of the city and outward 1,000 cubits round about. And you shall measure the city also without also from shall measure from without the city on the east side 2,000 cubits, on the south side 2,000 cubits, on the west side 2,000 cubits, on the north side 2,000 cubits, and the city shall be in the midst. This shall be them suburbs for the city. Okay, notice the suburbs are not like what we think think of today, where you got where you got a larger city, say Tulsa. You have an invisible line, and now you got another smaller town there, say Broken Arrow. That's a suburb of Tulsa. But that's what we're talking about. It's talking about an area around the walled city. Notice you measure out from the wall for their livestock to be at. That word cattle again, it's just that's Old English for livestock. That'd be a more modern translation to say livestock. So it's a green zone around, and on measured out the city on the east side 2,000. Okay, 2,000 on each direction. And there's kind of an inner suburb of 1,000 and 2,000. 2,000 cubits is right at 5/8 of a mile or 1 kilometer. And there's that inner suburb as well, and the inner suburb might be the area perhaps where the goods are, and perhaps booths for the cattle, except. And the outer one would be for the cattle, okay, the livestock, okay. So and that's because there ain't back in the day. There's no refrigeration. They want milk. They gotta have a cow and go milk it, and so on. And they got somewhere. They got horses of transportation. They got some of those horses to graze, except. Okay, so they're getting and this farmland. So they got this farmland. This farmland is not belonging to any individuals, though. Now become a little more plainer. It's a common area. You can think of like Central Park in New York City. This big park out there. This big unurbanized area in the middle, or Boston Common. Boston Common used to be called, because the town commonly would raise cattle and stuff, milk cattle and stuff on this in the middle of the city. Well, in this case, it's on the outside of the city, not inside. So the city's going to, so they got a little area again about a kilometer or 5/8 of a mile all the way around. So the livestock needed by the city can be maintained there. And again, but no individual Levite owns, some slice of that, and that'll become apparent as we go along later. It's not divided up in some way among the individuals. Now we're going to see this being carried. Now we're going to jump to Joshua 14, verse 33 through 4, and see how this was carried out. After when Joshua divided the land. For Moses had given an inheritance of 2.5 tribes on the other side of Jordan, but the Levites gave none inheritance among them. But the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. Therefore, they have no part. They gave no part unto the Levites of the land, save cities to dwell in, for their suburbs and their cattle for their substance. Okay, so you explain how this 2.5 tribes works, because Joseph's 2 tribes, and so it's half the tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim, and they're kind of together. But half of Manasseh's on one side, and across the Jordan River there's the other half, and then over there's Manasseh, and their portion the portion together is called Joseph. Okay. So the Levites don't have any inheritance on the east side of the river, and they don't have any inheritance among the children of Joseph, who are also on the west side. Except for cities as we mentioned. Now we go over to Joshua 18 verses 5 through 7, because that was referring to primarily to where they divided the land on the west side. Now, on the east side of the Jordan. Now we're looking at where they divide on the west side. a little later. And they shall divide it into 7 parts. Judah shall abide in their coast in the south, and the house of Joseph shall abide in their coast in the north. Shall therefore describe the land as 7 parts, and bring description there to me, that may cast lots for you here before the Lord our God. And the Levites shall have no part among you, for the priesthood of the Lord is their inheritance, and Gad and Reuben, the half tribe Manasseh, have received their inheritance beyond Jordan, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave them. Okay, so as I was describing here, so it mentions here the half tribe of Manasseh again. Now, why is Joseph's house abide in their coast of the north? For one thing, their inheritance has to half the tribe of Manasseh on the west, on the east, has its not be disjointed. On the other half of it's is going to be on the east side of the Jordan, so just across the river from it. And Joseph's instructions were about being buried in a particular place. So that set the boundary, that sort of set where the land of Joseph was. So Ephraim, so Manasseh, if Manasseh, since half the tribe of Manasseh took part in the land of the east, the other half's going to take it on the west, and then Ephraim's going to be next to them. So they're going to be going along. Okay, now south of them, you're going to have Judah. And God set God set the boundaries of that because of his promise to Caleb back when he gave the faithful report that where his foot went, he'd give him his inheritance, and Caleb wanted this particular area, and it was in the southern part. So you got Judah. The rest of it, this that takes care of all together. All together, that takes care of 5 of the tribes. So there's 7 left, and they're being cast. They're going to have to cast lots for them. But the Levites aren't getting a lot. Notice there's only 7. There's 7 tribes, not counting the Levites. The Levites don't get a lot. They don't get the agriculture. They are going to live in cities instead. They're not going to be farmland. Other than this land the land that's immediately around their walled cities. They're not going to be villages either. So all the Levites are going to end up being urbanites. That's to say, they live in walled cities, and these walled cities are not necessarily all large. They vary in size, but they've still got that urban. There's going to have that urban feel to them, as it were, because the city life's going to be all they know. Now, in Numbers 35, verse 6, where there's some of these cities they're going to be given are going to have a special characteristics. Are going to be special cities that have a special purpose. So here's what we read. And among the cities which shall give to the Levites, there shall be 6 cities for refuge, which you shall appoint for the manslayer may flee there. And to them which and to them you shall add 42 cities. Okay, so there's 6 cities of refuge. Also, 42. So a total of 48 cities are going to have. 6 of them are going to be cities of refuge for the manslayer or someone that kills someone. And we'll look at the details of that. And we're going to look at the details of that next year. Because, someone kills one under what circumstance except. How's this work? So while we read here, he's speaking to the children of Israel and saying to them, when you come over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall appoint your cities to be cities of refuge for you. The slayer may flee to there, which kills any person at unawares. And they shall be unto you cities of refuge from the avenger. that the manslayer die not until he stand before the congregation in judgment. And these things shall give shall and of these things which shall give, 6 cities you shall have for refuge. Shall give 3 on this side of Jordan, and 3 you shall give in the land of Canaan, which shall be cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall be a refuge for both the children of Israel and for the stranger, for the sojourner among them, that everyone that kills any persons unawares may flee to there. Okay, so this time about somebody kills someone by accident, when it says kills them unawares, okay? Unawares. It wasn't intentional. They unintentionally killed someone. They can flee there. Now, notice what they flee there. They flee there to go to the stand for the judgment, for the congregation in judgment. And if they claim it's an accident, and there's no evidence otherwise, we'll see this the vengers to actually bring them there as well. But if it's certain, but we'll look at the rules here in a moment. But so they go there until they get a fair trial is the first thing. Okay. He's just not killed outright. But and what this avenger is a kinsman avenger, and typically it's someone's direct relative, like their direct brother, or perhaps if not, go a little further in the clan, their cousin, someone like that. It can even be someone else from their tribe. You know, and perhaps they were often in their tribe's area, but someone as a friend, someone like that. But typically, again, it's someone from there's kind of a pecking order who gets to be the avenger, who gets to carry out the avenging. But generally, again, it's from it's ideally from the family. The family first, the clan second, the extended family second. Closest to them, blood relative is the ideal, and maybe if there isn't one, a friend, someone like that. Perhaps they were a foreigner, say, came in there, they didn't have any blood relative, they had a good friend. They may be the avenger. Now, let's read on here. We're going to continue on reading about this avenger in this business, and about what circumstances are not considered, that are not accidental. And here's what we read in Numbers, again, 35, verse 16 through 21. If he smite him with an instrument of iron so they die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. If he smite him with a throwing stone where he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. This murder shall surely be put to death. If he smite with a hand weapon of wood, wherein he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murder shall surely be put to death. The avenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meets him, he shall slay him. Or if he thrusts at him of hatred, or hurled at him by laying in wait till he die, or an enmity smite him with his hand till he die, he that smote him shall surely put to death. He is a murderer, and the avenger of blood shall slay the murderer when he meets him. Okay, I want you to notice, first of all, it's the avenger of blood. This is a commandment to him. It's his obligation. I mean, he's commanded by God to do so. It isn't just a matter of him being, angry at this man or this person. If they killed someone on purpose, and notice when he meets him, if it's certain, like say there are eyewitnesses, and perhaps this avenger of blood was one of them. There's no trial, no jury, no lawyers, just an execution, some Ozark justice, as it was when I grew up. Okay, I mean, just kill him right there, hang his dead body up in a tree, bury him in the woods somewhere. That's by sundown, bring it. We're sundown, cut his body down. And in the coat of the hills, bury him in the woods. You don't want him in the community graveyard, because it's like the community disowned him. Okay, as if you disowned him for being a murderer. Now that part's not in here, of course, but that ideal in the code of the hills of this came from this passage here. But it's saying most of that. If he knows for a fact, got to be two witnesses at least. No one can die without two or three witnesses. But he knows it for certain. There don't even have to be a trial. He don't have to take the guy. He don't have to take the guy before a congregation for a trial. He can just kill it. He's not like Kenny Nice, commanded to kill him on the spot. Okay, deal out some Ozark justice. Now, we continue on in Numbers 35, verse 22 through 25. If he thrust him suddenly without enmity, or cast him upon him any without laying of weight, or any stone wherein a man may die, seeing him not, and cast it upon him may die, not, was not his enemy, near saw his harm, then the congregation shall judge for the slayer and the avenger of blood according to these judgments. And the congregation shall deliver the slayer out of and the avenger of blood. The congregation shall restore him to the city of his refuge, where he fled. He shall abide until death. The high priest shall just anoint it with the holy oil. Okay, as I mentioned, there has to be two witnesses. Okay, so, and the avenger, notice here the avenger of blood's is there with the city of refuge also. The avenger of blood is obligated to bring him in for a trial if he doesn't know it for certain. Okay, if he didn't see it along with another witness. All right. So so the innocent man's not killed. Okay, you don't deal out Ozark justice to innocent to people unless you're 100%, unless it's 100% certain, which requires two or three witnesses. That ideal came from this passage we're looking at here. So instead, you gotta have the congregation judge. The congregation's gonna ask questions, whatever. And it was an accident. Then the slayer is going to be, and notice, restored to the city of his refuge where he fled. So he was taken outside the city. He was taken outside the city for this trial, and perhaps in the area, and perhaps with a family of the victim, could watch the trial. Okay, after the trial, he's brought back in there, and he has to stay there to the death of the high priest. Well, as I wrote about in my I got a blog too. My blog post called NWA, short for Northwest Arkansas, about the code of the hills, how that was carried out because they didn't have a city of refuge. Well, they basically told him to leave escort him to the edge of the Ozarks. Perhaps they went to a border city like Kansas City or Tulsa or somewhere like that. Or often they left, went to their area like the hill country of Texas. But the point was, don't return. Don't come back. Okay. Sort of like in a movie, you saw someone, don't you come back. No, better not catch you in Texas again. Same sort of mentality. In fact, that's probably where the Texans got that mentality, probably from the people from the Ozarks who moved down to the Texas Hill Country, brought that culture with them, which started from the days of St. Patrick, believe it or not. So, but it ultimately had its root in this law here. So he's got to stay there because there was no high priest. It was just don't come back, period. But in their case, in the case of the law here, it was the death of the high priest, was anointed with the holy oil, because the high priest represented Messiah. And Messiah's death cleansed us of sin, cleansed of all unrighteousness, took away all our guilt, paid for our penalty, as it were. His death paid for that. The prayer priest paid for the blood of the one who'd been killed accidentally. That's why the death of the high priest, because he's a picture of Messiah. Well, there's some more rules about this. In Acts 35, 26 to 20, we see these rules. If the slayer come any time out without the border of the city of his refuge, where he has fled, the avenger and the avenger of blood find him without the borders of the refuges of the city of his refuge. The avenger of blood and the avenger of blood kill the slayer. he shall not be guilty of blood, because he shall remain in the city of his refuge to the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the slayer shall return to the land of his possession. Okay, so as I mentioned about this Ozark justice, this ideal came from here. And of course, not having a high priest, but notice it's his blood's on his own head. The avenger of blood, the revenger of blood. Now it's revenger. The revenger, the kinsman revenger finds him. If he comes, if he leaves the city, and that guy finds him and kills him, perhaps in a crime of passion, people would say today, but just kills him. He's not guilty of murder because the one who killed someone by accident, was supposed to stay with was commanded to stay within the borders of his refuge. He God had provided that place of refuge, and he left it. And, it's like that. If we leave the refuge for us, if we leave the refuge of walking in God's commandments, Satan, we're opening Satan to come kill us. And the blood's on our own heads because we did not stay in the city of refuge. That's the idea. And back to the Ozark justice, the go to the hills. If the guys came back into the Ozarks and people found him, dead somewhere, murdered, the assumption generally was well, first of all, he was told don't come back, and he did, and his blood's on his own head, and it was probably the clan of the family got him. And this ideal, when I grew up, well, I'll say it this way: the extended just beyond the people that lived there from a long time and was fading out. But the Arkansas State Troopers had a reputation of this as well. And basically, the view was one of their own. It was like their family, and the police general were like their clan. And there was in the city where my wife grew up. Years later, a cop, someone killed a cop there, and first thing they did was run to Oklahoma, and where the Oklahoma State Troopers caught him, and I guess they hand him over to Arkansas to be tried because the crime was there eventually. But if they hadn't caught him, if the troopers lived up to their reputation, there would have been no trial or nothing. The guy's car had been at the bottom of a ravine with 300 bullet holes in it, burning in flames. And they had wrote he died in the pursuit of accident, pursue the crime, or fleeing from a crime, and died in pursuit. And that would have been that if they lived up to their reputation. But that reputation, their actions of their reputation was based on this, handing out this Ozark justice in line with the Code of the Hills, which has its roots, as we see right here. Okay, so that's what he sees a refuge are for. In their case, they're a refuge. In the case, again, the Ozarks, because they didn't have cities of refuge, people actually ran to churches until they could have a trial. And his church sanctuary was literally a sanctuary. It was understood if they went in there, no one could go in there and drag them out, to dish out to get revenge. They had to wait till a trial held outside the church, and then brought back in there and found, and escorted again out to the edge of the Ozarks and said, "Don't come back, or your blood's on your own." Or your blood's on your own. So this ideals, and the Cherokee had a similar system too. By the way, before the Europeans ever showed up, they also had cities of refuge. Well, that's another story. I got a blog about the Cherokee we can read. It explains why the state of Israel, they're the only Native American tribe the state of Israel says maybe they're descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. I'll just put it that way. And you can go read that and see why if you ever check out my blog called The Cherokee. All right, now enough about that. Now let's continue on here with our lesson. I veered a little bit, I guess. In Joshua 20, verses 7 through 9, we read the following. And they appointed Kadesh in Galilee, in Mount Naphtali, in Shechem, in Mount Ephraim, in Kirjath Arba, which is Hebron, in the mountain of Judah. On the other side of Jordan, Jericho east, where they assigned Bezer in the wilderness, out of the plain of the tribe of Reuben, Gilead, Gamoth and Gilead, out of the tribe of Gad, Golan in Bashan, out of the tribe of Manasseh. These cities were appointed all the children of Israel for the strangers sojourn among them. Whosoever kills any person of the wearer might flee to there and not die by the hand of the avengers of blood till he stood trial before the congregation. Okay, so notice they appointed Kadesh. A point of note here is that they're all mountains on the west side. But in Galilee, up to the northernmost, Naphtali, Shechem in the middle on the west side, Hebron in the south part of the west side. On the east side of the Jordan, the order is actually back reversed. Bezer's in the southernmost part, the tribe of Reuben. The tribe of Reuben, Ramoth in Gilead out of the tribe middle, Golan's the northernmost, and Bashan out of the tribe of Manasseh. So we got 6 of the tribes contributed to these cities. So that's 6 of the special cities of refuge that were there to make sure people who accidentally killed somebody weren't killed as a murderer, killed as a murder without a trial, or even they were guilty, they got a trial. And here's a little map, gives you an idea where they're at. Okay. And this map, the guy's drawn approximately 1 day journey. I'm not sure these are quite 100% accurate because you got some overlap, but it gives you a general idea. Okay. And this would be approximately the area of Jericho, right along over here. Jericho actually on this side, but that gives you an idea. They could where they could flee and how they're spread out, and it's going to be in proportion to the population at the time. This part down here is more deserty. It's lower population density at the time. This part's got the highest population density. Okay. Now we're gonna look at a little reminder, some insight into why they scattered these cities in the first place. I mean, they're inheritance of cities because God gives them that. They don't need the farmland for the income. But as you just saw on the map, their cities are pretty scattered. Okay, these are the cities of refuge, and they got 42 others. Why the scattering? We know why aren't their cities just all near each other? Well, that goes back to the words of Jacob right before he died, or Israel, same man. And here's what we read when he speaks over 2 of his children, Simeon and Levi, his second and third oldest sons. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. My soul, come not you into their secret, and to their assembly, mine honor, be not united. For their anger they slew a man, and their self-will they dig down the wall. Cursed be their anger, for his fierce, and their oath and their wrath for his cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Okay, and this is referring to when he was in Shechem. He tried to settle down there, made booths, and as I showed in the story when we went over it, we were talking about the patriarchs, that really Diana was just as guilty, but they all blame, there's all like none of our family's perfect. Everyone else is the problem. And the young man even tried to do what was right. He made an agreement with them, and basically they lied. They broke their agreement. They lied. It was all conspiracy so they could kill this man. And not just this man, a bunch of people had nothing to do with it. The whole city except that's part of taking down the wall. And they were given the conspiracies and cruelty. And as I mentioned, as I shown before, Keriot, where Judas Iscariot means Judas of Keriot. Keriot was one of the cities of Levi, of Simeon. And what did he do? He made a conspiracy against Messiah with the chief priests who are from Levi. And so there's that aspect is brought there of this wickedness that's future that don't associate the rest of us with that, with Israel in general with that. Okay. And those they slew in their anger, they slew a man. Okay, well, in this case, he's talking about them past tense, but their descendants are going to slew a man in anger, Messiah. They dig down a wall. Well, because of their actions, the wall of Jerusalem fell. The Temple Mount was destroyed eventually. So there's some, the prophetic side to this. Is my point. The wrath was cruel. Crucifixion is cruel. Their fear and their anger was fierce. So they had that characteristics, and again, there's that prophetic aspect here that I'm bringing out. Concerning Messiah. That's brought out as well. Some very other prophetic aspects concerning Judah and stuff regarding Messiah as well in this passage. So they're going to be divided in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So they're going to be divided and scattered. So make it harder for them to make these conspiracies and work together. Work together in this cruelty. There's always these people, these conspiracies about Jewish. Well, if there really wasn't a group that was doing it, it wouldn't be all Jews. It'd be descendants of these two. Okay, so they're going to be scattered to make that harder for them to carry out. So Numbers 35. In Numbers 35, that's Moses. God gives Moses instructions for carrying out the scattering of the Levites. So all the cities you'll give the Levites shall be 48 cities. You shall give them with the suburbs. And the cities shall give them possession of the children of Israel. From them that have many, you shall give many. From there are few, shall give few. And everyone shall give his cities unto the Levites according to his inheritance, which he inherits. So it's talking about all the other tribes. Those have a lot of cities. Are going to have to give those have many cities. Are going to have to give many proportionally. It's going to be proportionally cities they have inside their territory. Walled cities. Remember, we're talking about. Okay. So the Levites going to be scattered among all 12 tribes. Well, Simeon's scattered too, and I'll explain how that works in a minute. Okay. How could Simeon, who's also going to be scattered, give Levite cities. But so they're going to be scattered among all the tribes. Levites particularly singled out that way. Simeon's a little different, which I'll explain. Now in Joshua 7, Joshua 21, verse 13 through 19, read the following. We start reading about this distribution of these cities to the Levites. And they gave unto the children of Aaron, the priest, Hebron with her suburbs, to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Libnah with her suburbs, and Jeter with her suburbs, and Eshtemoa with her suburbs, and Holon with her suburbs, and Deber with her suburbs, and Ain with her suburbs, and Judah with her suburbs, and Beth Shemesh with her suburbs. 9 cities out of those 2 tribes. Out of the tribe of Benjamin, Gibeon with her suburbs, Geba with her suburbs, Anathoth with her suburbs, Almon with her suburbs. 4 cities. In all the cities of the children of Israel, of Aaron, the priests, were 13 cities with their suburbs. Okay, so it's 13 all, and they're on the west. All these are on the west side of the Jordan River in the southern part. Where Benjamin is connected directly next to Judah. Okay, Benjamin's lot was to be right next to Judah. Was to be right next to Judah. There's four of them. Now, what's it say? Why does it say these two tribes? Well, if you look above, if we looked above here, we'd see the two tribes are Judah and Simeon. Simeon didn't have enough. Simeon didn't have enough. Simeon, I'm sorry, Judah had too much land in his portion of the south. So Simeon's portion was cities scattered throughout Judah. They were scattered among all the tribes, just in Judah, in the south part, and they also inherited. They didn't inherit any farmland, but they did inherit. They inherited suburbs like this mentions around the cities, and they inherited the unwalled villages that were connected with that walled city. So they have so they have a little bit of farmland in that sense as well, but they don't have a big chunk of land that's the land of Simeon. Now, as I mentioned the days of Messiah, they will have a strip of land that goes all the way over to the Euphrates. I'm sorry, that goes all the way over to the Mediterranean Sea on the west side and all the way to the eastern border of Israel on the east side as well. They will no longer be scattered, and Judah and Levi will not be scattered anymore either. But until then, they're going to be scattered. And this is the day how they were scattered back in that day. So that's why it says two tribes. Okay. So between these two tribes, they gave nine of theirs. Again, proportional. 48 altogether. 9 are going to come from there. And notice one of them's a city of refuge. And these are to the priest, Aaron and the priest. Now, you have to think of this. Aaron only had 2 sons when they came out of the wilderness. Well, we don't know how many sons they had, but this time there's probably more cities than sons of the priest. So this is prophetic, expecting the priest to multiply greatly. Okay, and the majority of people in the cities that are going to live in there initially aren't going to be the Levite, aren't going to be the priests themselves, but people who live there to take care of things in the city. But nonetheless, they're going to be the owners. Okay, of these cities. And over time, as more priests are born, that situation will change. But there's going to be laborers, perhaps of foreigners, except who are going to have to take care of all the labor of the cities, because the priests have the job of being the priests also. Just an interesting note that they get 13 cities at this time. There's probably not even 13 priests. Now, we continue on in Joshua, where maybe they get 1 per city. Maybe there were 13, but that's it's the most it'd probably been. Now in Joshua 21, verse 20 through 26, read the following. The families of Kohath, the Levites which remained of the children of Kohath, even they had the cities of their lot out of the tribe of Ephraim. For they gave them Shechem with her suburbs in Mount Ephraim to be the city of refuge for the slayer, and Gezer with her suburbs, and Kibzaim with her suburbs, and Beth Horon with her suburbs, 4 cities. Out of the tribe of Dan, Eltika with her suburbs, Gibbethon with her suburbs, Ajalon with her suburbs, Gathrimmon with her suburbs, 4 cities. Out of the tribe of Manasseh, Tanakh with her suburbs, Gathrimmon with her suburbs, 2 cities. All these cities were 10 with their suburbs to the family of the children of Kohath that remained. You notice they actually get less cities. But again, as I mentioned, not all these cities are all going to be equal in size. They're walled cities. And when you think about walled cities, don't think of them all being like a great walled city. Well, an example, modern day example, would be Jerusalem. I mean, the walled city of Jerusalem's got a few hundred acres inside of it, okay, or 100 or so hectares if you're metric, something of that nature. Well, but a lot weren't even that big, okay. They may, and some of them may only hold 1,000 people or something inside the walls. So don't think they're necessarily giant cities like, say, London or New York City or something, because it says they're walled cities. Okay, it just means they have this defensive wall around them, or this wall that limits where they're at, that gives them that urban characteristic. So you've got Tanakh, and so now the Ephraim is where Shechem is, where Joseph was buried. It's an Ephraim. It's the ruling. It's the ruling of his two tribes. Manasseh got the double portion. But Ephraim was selected as the ruler by Joseph when he across his hands. Okay, and indeed Shechem was the capital, etc. So this is a city of refuge as well. And as we go on, and so we got these 10 from. So that brings us to a total of 23. Now, as we can now, and remember, I forgot. Remember the Kohathites, the Kohaths, the Kohaths. They are the ones who carried the furnishings of the tabernacle, including the brazen altar, etc. The priests had to cover it up. We discussed this, but they actually carried that part, and they had to carry it on their shoulders because and they got the highest honor, and they are therefore got their portion closest to the priest. And notice the priests have the portion that's in the south, and their portion is connected to it. Now we're going to read about the next portion, and that's over in Joshua 21, as we continue on Joshua 21, verse 27 through 33. Unto the children of Gershom, of the families of the Levites, out of the half tribe of Manasseh, they gave Golan in Bashan with her suburbs to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Bish Torah with her suburbs, 2 cities. Out of the tribe of Issachar, Kishon with her suburbs, and Dabarah with her suburbs, Jarmuth with her suburbs, and Gedin with her suburbs, 4 cities. Out of the tribe of Manasseh of Asher, Mishal with her suburbs, Abaddon with her suburbs, Hilkath with her suburbs, Rehob with her suburbs, 4 cities. Out of the tribe of Naphtali, Kadesh in Galilee with her suburbs, to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Hamath Dor with her suburbs, and Katan with her suburbs, 3 cities. All the cities of the Gershonites, according to their families, were 13 cities with their suburbs. Okay, so notice the Gershonites, and remember their job was to carry all the curtains and all the coverings in the tabernacle, including the courtyard covering, except not the framework, but everything attached to the framework and covered the framework. Okay, the building itself and the framework of the outer court. They carried the cloth of all that on wagons. Okay. And notice they're getting 13 cities also, which brings us to a total of 36 cities. Okay, and notice that two of theirs are cities of refuge. This first one is the northernmost city of refuge on the west side of the Jordan. And they also the northernmost one on the east side of the Jordan down here. So they're the northernmost. So you have the southernmost, the priest, the middle part of the west, the middle portion of the west. What was the Kohathites? Gershom's got the northernmost of east and west. Okay, parts of east and west as well. And again, we're up at 36 cities. Now we look at our last group here in Joshua 21, verse 34 through 40. And unto the families of the children of Merari, The rest of the Levites, out of the tribe of Zebulun, Jokneam, Neam with her city, Jokneam with her cities, Yokneam, I should say, Yokneam with her cities, Qatar with her, Karta with her city suburbs, Dibna with her suburbs, Nahaliel with her suburbs, out of the tribe of Reuben, Bezer with her suburbs, Jahazal with her suburbs, Kedamoth with her suburbs, Methathoth with her suburbs, 4 cities. Out of the tribe of Gad, Ramoth in Gilead with her suburbs, to be a city of refuge for the slayer. And Menachem with her suburbs, Heshbon with her suburbs, Jazer with her suburbs, 4 cities in all. So all the children of the children of Merari by their families, remaining the families of the Levites, were by their lot 12 cities. Okay, so 2 out of each tribe that's over on this side over here. So even though Zebulun wasn't part of the original ones who on the east side, but after they conquered the land, some of that land was still on the east of the Jordan River, up by the area of Galilee, and they're up there. And it doesn't notice how it doesn't mention Bezer here being a refuge of slayer, but we know it is. And it's actually the southernmost one. And Gad's here actually in the middle. Reuben's in the south, and Gad here is in the middle. So this is you see that northern middle southern arrangement again. And so they're scattered pretty evenly across the entire area. And remember, the Merari were the ones who carried the actual framework of the building. They carried all the boards. They carried the posts of the tabernacle, etc. And that's why they're wandering. Remember when once they set this thing up in Shiloh, which they're did here in Joshua, they're all be given new jobs. Okay, but that was their job initially. So just to remind you of who they are. So they're over there on the east side, except for the northernmost part of the east side, the part north of the edge of Galilee. See here's the northernmost, right up here. They're right up here in this area. And the Golan's where the famous Golan Heights are named after. Okay, so you got this ideal of where everything is. So they're very scattered out. The Levites, as mentioned, the Simeons are only scattered among in the land of Judah, not scattered near as much, not near as badly. And the Levites scattered much more. And one reason for that these cities of refuge thing be evenly distributed. But another is perhaps an additional layer of guilt in the whole Simeon, in the whole business Jacob was talking about. Perhaps they influenced Simeon. They were more instrumental in it than Simeon. But perhaps, anyways. But regardless, they're scattered. They're scattered farther from them. They're scattered out much further. Now, and they didn't get any unwalled cities that were near their walled cities either. They're complete urbanites, unlike the Simeonites. So they have no farmland. The Simeons have a little bit. But the Simeons need some for income because they're not collecting tithes from everyone else like the Levites. So the inheritance of the Levites, where they're going to live in these cities, what they're going to do is assist the priests. What another part of their inheritance, where they get where's their income going to come from? The tithes. Okay, now because their situation's different, there's some special rules about their cities and property compared that is separate from everyone else because they are separate. Their inheritance is different. And here's what we read in Leviticus 25, verse 29 through 34. If a man sell a dwelling house in a walled city, they redeem it within a whole year after the sowed. Within a full year may he redeem it. If it be not redeemed within the space of a full year, then the house that is in the walled city shall be established forever to him that bought throughout his generations. It shall not go out in the Jubilee. But the house of the villages which have no wall about them, which counts the fields of the country, they may be redeemed, and they shall go out in the Jubilee. Notwithstanding, the cities of the Levites and the house of their possession, cities of their and the house of the cities of their possessions, may the Levites redeem at any time. If any man purchase the Levites, then the house that was sold in the city of his possession shall go out the year of Jubilee. For the house of the Levites are the possession among the children of Israel. But the fields of the suburbs shall not be sold, for it's their perpetual possession. Okay, so everyone else, all the other 12 tribes, because they have somewhere else to live, they don't have to live in these cities. They can even the Simeons can live in the unwalled villages outside. So if they sell their house in a city, they have a whole year to buy it back at the price they were given. To give the money back, their guys to move out, they can move back in. But after a year, nope, it belongs to their people permanently. Okay. But the villages are just like the fields. So when they can be redeemed, and if they can't manage to redeem them in the year of Jubilee, every 50th year, 7 years, 7 Shemitahs, years of release, followed by an extra year, the year of Jubilee. And that's, by the way, where the words on the Liberty Bell come from. Let liberty be proclaimed out the land. You're to blow trumpets and proclaim liberty throughout the land when the year of Jubilee starts. And part of that liberty is you get back your property. So the non-urban property can never leave the tribe permanently. The unwalled cities will never leave the tribe permanently for all these other tribes. However, inside the walled cities, someone else, a foreigner, can move in there and buy it and stay if it wasn't redeemed within a year. Okay. So this is what provides a place for the foreigners to live. And what this does is the minority has a place of their own. And you can have sort of say a little Mexico, a little Italy, whatever. But it doesn't change the characteristic of the tribe and the land overall. That because the natural tendency is people are going to move where they got people who speak their own language. So what a lot of people of a certain ethnic group wind up moving into, but they're not going to be able to do is spread out and take over the land around there. And this is often why cities have a much different characteristic than once you get away from this. That's why often I refer, like I went to Hawaii, and when I got away from Honolulu, I was like, oh, now I'm in the real Hawaii, because Honolulu had a bunch of foreigners moved in there who had influence of foreign stuff, and you got out away from that. It was much more the native Hawaiians and stuff, and it was a very different vibe to the whole thing. Okay, well, it's true about every state I've been in. The real Oklahoma isn't Oklahoma City and Tulsa. The real Texas is not Dallas and certainly not not Austin and Houston. But it's more like places like Glen Rose and stuff like that. Then you're kind of out in the real Texas. It's got a very different feel to it, because the cities have many more people. I mean, Dallas has a thing called Tokyo in Japan. I mean, Tokyo in Dallas. And what it is a chain, a group spread out in a shape that almost looks, it kind of reminds you of Japan, by the way they happen to be spread out. That looks like of Japanese immigrants and their stores and stuff that have moved there. And and it's fine they're there, but you get a very different feel for Texas when you move out again. Go out there far from the large cities. You're kind of more into real Texas. You kind of get in the real, and it's true about every state. Well, that's the ideal here. Okay. That's the ideal here. Foreigners, we need, perhaps need them for various reasons. As we mentioned before, as we mentioned that during the kingdom of Messiah, they're going to need it for lots of reasons. Got to have a place for them to live. They can live in these cities. That's why there's no redemption. But the Levites, it's a little different story because the Levites don't have somewhere else to live. They don't have unwalled cities and a little bit of land around them, a little bit of farmland. They don't have a type of farmland that's individually any of theirs outside the city. The suburb, notice, it not be sold because it doesn't belong to any individual Levite. No Levite can sell it. Again, it's like Boston Common was in Boston originally. Belonged to nobody. Everyone paid, but people could raise their cattle on there and whatever. And eventually they grew up that that was impractical. So some cattle would be on there and people could, pay part of the upkeep of the cattle and get some of the milk or whatever the case was. But the land didn't belong to, or like Central Park in New York, it doesn't belong to the individual. So that part can't be sold. But this is why they're always going to get theirs back in the year of Jubilee, when they can always buy it back because it's their only place to live. With one other option. Except, I should say, for one other option, another city, which we're going to talk about. In Deuteronomy 18, verses 15 through 8, we read the following. For Lord God has chosen him out of all his tribes to stand in the midst of the name of the Lord, him and his sons forever. And if the Levite come from any of his gates out of the city, from any of your gates out of all of Jerusalem where he sojourned, and come with all desire in his mind to the place the Lord shall choose, and he shall minister in the name of the Lord his God, is all his brethren the Levites do, which stand before the Lord. They shall have like portions to eat besides that which comes to the sale of his patrimony. Okay, the sale of his patrimony was the money he got for selling his house. Notice he can move to this other city from any of your gates out of Israel. Any other cities, they can move to this place where God's going to put his name at. And that place, of course, is Jerusalem. Now, I read off every single city's name. And you may have noticed Jerusalem was never mentioned. The 48 cities that they were given by lots, and God controls the lot, the Bible tells us. The lot's cast in the lap, but the decision is the Lord's, it tells them Proverbs. Jerusalem was not one of their cities. But they all can move there. Why? Because the place he puts his name, the temple's going to be there. Well, that's where they're going to work at. Now, if they don't move there, eventually they're going to serve in courses, and but they have to come down from wherever there is. And it can be as we've shown on our map, can be a 3-day journey for some people, or maybe a little longer even. Do their service, and then of course have to travel back. Okay, and they're going to collect their part of the tithes at that time, their portion, and go back home, right? And they have to do that a couple times a year, perhaps. Well, the courses get changed over time, but yeah. But if they want to stay down here and just live on and be there permanently, then they can do that. So they can sell their money from their house they had and buy a house in Jerusalem instead with it. That's the point of the sell their patrimony. They can relocate to Jerusalem. And historically, Jerusalem, say by the time after David and Solomon, particularly by the time of Messiah, the part over where the king was, Zion, over to the west, towards the west, if you kind of divide the city in half, over in the western part, mostly people from Judah and foreigners. But the part closest to near the temple and closest to it, the priests and the Levites. Because this is where they work, so therefore they can have the option to buy property there, to buy a house there, to sell their house in the city where they were, and relocate to Jerusalem. And here's where Jerusalem, and here we can be certain that they did not get Jerusalem. In Joshua 28 and Joshua 18, verse 28, it tells us who Jerusalem belonged to. In Zelah and Aleph and Jebusi, which is Jerusalem, or Yebusi, which is Jerusalem, Gibeah, and Kirjah. 14 cities of their village inherits the children of Benjamin according to their families. Okay. You called Yebusi or Jebusi, if you prefer, because the Jebusites lived there. Also, Jerusalem, called Salem, when Melchizedek was there. Melchizedek was there, or Melchizedek. We'll just say that. Melchizedek, that's how people say it sometimes. Okay, but Melchizedek, mispronounce it that way. Anyways, we're there here with Benjamin. Okay, so they're down. So they belong to them. So it has this really unusual status during the days of King David and Set, because David, in the city of David, Joash takes it. The children of Benjamin never were able to take it, but it's actually part of it belongs to children of Benjamin. But so it's split. It's kind of got sort of a double ownership between these two. I mean, Benjamin owns it, but most people who are dwelling it are actually from Judah. The king there, it's the capital. The king of Judah is the ruling tribe, but the capital building is actually in capital city is actually part of Benjamin. But it's also where the temple is in a Levitical city because of all the Levites who moved there. And in the future, as I mentioned, Simeon's not going to be having a strip. Is going to have a strip that has the western end on the Mediterranean Sea and runs eastward. In all 12 tribes are going to have that, except for Levi. The Levites will no longer be scattered either, but they will be their inheritance, their land will be completely around the city of Jerusalem. It will be at the center of it. And they're the only tribe that doesn't have a coast on the Mediterranean coast. They have a kind of a square piece of property with Jerusalem in the center of it. And that's the ultimate inheritance of the Levites. And as I said at the end of my series we just wrapped up about the kingdom, the tribulation of the kingdom. Our ultimate inheritance is the New Jerusalem, whether those who live outside and bring tribute into it, because they only kept the weightier matters of the law, or those who keep those plus the lesser matters of the law, our inheritance will be to live in that city and have tribute brought to us. But either way, it's a great inheritance. It beats burning the lake of fire by a long shot, immeasurably. So that which is where all who reject God's ways will end up. So choose wisely, walk in his commandments, walk in at least the greater commandments. You have a place in the kingdom. But if you want a greater place, keep also the lesser commandments. And which I've described. And so that's it for this. That's it for today. Until next time, shalom.